Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα σας. Είναι Πέμπτη βράδυ, βλέπετε Θεσσαλία τηλεόραση και όπως συμβαίνει αυτή τη μέρα, αυτή την ώρα, σε αυτή τη συχνότητα, παρακολουθείτε την εκπομπή Δεξιά και Αριστερά. Πριν από μερικές εβδομάδες έγινε μια τεράστια συναλλαγή στον χώρο των social media. Το περιβόητο Twitter μεταφέρθηκε, μεταβιβάστηκε στα χέρια του επιχειρηματία Elon Musk στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες, κάτι που σημαίνει τεράστιες αλλαγές στον τρόπο με τον οποίο λειτουργεί το ίδιο το Twitter, αλλά και επιπτώσεις στον κόσμο των social media. Αυτό είναι το θέμα της συζήτησης που θα έχουμε σήμερα με την καλή φίλη της εκπομπής και εξαιρετική καθηγήτρια του Temple University των Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών, την κυρία Sherri Culver, την οποία φιλοξενούμε ξανά μετά από μερικούς μήνες. Sherri, good evening from Greece. It's really nice to see you again after those months. Since the last time we talked together.
It's always nice to talk to you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, we're surprised in Greece. I can understand you were surprised as well in the United States from this huge transaction of one of the most popular social media platform, the Twitter platform, which it's now a property of Mr. Elon Musk. And we were surprised, firstly, because of the fact that there is a guy in the United States that he has a fortune about what, $260 billion, and he's capable to buy a social media platform like a child buys his new toy. Is it like that actually?
Well, that's an interesting sort of framing of it, to think that that it's a whim to him, that it's not something deeply considered. It's like, I have the money, why not? Yeah. And you and I can guess at that, because who can get inside the brain of this crazy man? It's hard to sometimes predict what he's thinking.
Is he a crazy man, really?
I don't know. Well, I think he likes to be provocative. Yes. I think he enjoys having a reputation where he is unpredictable, and where money is freedom in a lot of ways, and he has a lot of money, so it enables him to do the things that he wants to do. Which, I mean, we can't fault him for that. We would probably like that too, but it sometimes is. They can be seen as very bold choices that he makes, or sometimes kind of crazy choices that he makes.
Was that a crazy choice to buy Twitter, under your point of view?
I guess it depends. I guess it depends what you want to do with it. I mean, certainly owning a social media company in this day and age is where power is, right? Yeah. So I cannot completely understand the allure of wanting to own a social media company. Why does he want to own Twitter? I think we can ask ourselves that. He has enough money that he could start his own company if he wanted to, but he chose to purchase a company that exists, and a company that doesn't always make a profit. It's not always a profitable company, but it is it's in the it is news making, right? Twitter is a news making organization.
It's like a typical media company in my eyes, and it's not just one more social media platform, but it's also a political tool. Leaders all around the world,
right,
and political actors they are using Twitter to make policies. So I'm very confused about the use of this platform in the hands of Elon Musk. How will he treat in this way?
Yeah, I share that concern. I think that we just don't know. I mean, what he has said publicly is that he has a desire for it to be an open forum for democracy and for free speech. But what Twitter has been trying to do over the past couple of years is find ways to take away the disinformation that is on Twitter. So, there's some confusion, I think, between free speech and disinformation. The purpose of free speech is not for you to be able to spread any lie that you want to spread. It's for people to have a forum to voice their opinion, But if what's going to happen is if and we don't know this yet, but if Elon Musk allows people like former President Trump to come back onto Twitter to say whatever they want to say, and as you point out, it's a very political tool, then you have the scary and dangerous possibility that misinformation and disinformation could be spread, very quickly among a lot of people who aren't really thinking closely about what they're consuming, and that can have real world effects. It's not just something that will exist on social media. It's something that could change the way people vote, change the way people the way wars are,
But I have a simple question. What if there is an information that is against Elon Musk company's profits?
Right.
How will a man treat when he owns a social media, a mechanism of spreading the information, and this information comes against his benefits? How will he react?
I mean, I think we have to assume he's not going to like that. It's interesting. He's not only, this is not only about having a public company, not just about the ownership, but he wants it to be a privately owned company.
Yeah.
He wants to own it. That, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you are the most wonderful, generous person in the world. I think having a news and information platform where all the decisions are made by one central person globally is a pretty scary thought. So the idea that he wouldn't want negative news about his own company, I would. I mean, he certainly would have the power to do that. Whether he would do it, I don't know. He would have the power.
Personally, I wouldn't let it come out if it's against my benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what's most shocking to me in the whole story is that the board agreed to it. Is that they could have, and I don't know all of the detail, behind the scenes negotiations that are going on, but it very much seems like this was a money decision, right? Elon Musk offered a very high price for the shares. He already owns a majority of the shares. The people that own shares in Twitter could make quite a lot of money from the sale of the company to Elon Musk. And so it seems like it was driven by a desire to make money more than anything else. And that's the scariest part to me, because we have companies now that are independent, right, privately owned, even if they're publicly owned companies. They're not owned by the government, and they don't necessarily have a goal of positive news and information the way traditional companies did. And so they're making decisions that are really very much driven by profit and not by other mission goals, and that could hurt all of us.
Well, it's a very tempting decision if someone is offering you a lot of money, maybe some billions of dollars, to take the decision to sell an information tool and never care about the consequences of what will happen next. But you are very experienced in the social media and the media in generally, working a lot of years for them, and now teaching media literacy in Temple University. And I have to say that, American democracy and global democracy also is based on some rules and some checks and balances to provide democracy of any, offense, of any danger. Will those checks and balances operate work now that we have a situation on which one man has the money and the power and he controls information itself? Will it work?
Yeah. I mean, it's testing the limits of democracy for sure.
Yeah.
A piece about this that I think is important to remember is that this notion of free speech, when people in America talk about, we have freedom of speech, this is the technical parameters of that is that it's free speech in the Constitution, meaning that the government cannot limit your free speech.
Mm-hmm.
So the government is not able to do something that would stop you. But a private company can. A private company is a private company. They can do whatever they want to do. And so traditionally we had news organizations that were mindful of their fifth estate goal, where they were providing the checks and balances. They played an important role in the checks and balances. If you start seeing yourself as not a news organization, but just like a forum for dialogue,
mm-hmm.
then you feel like you can create. You're bound by different rules.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes me nervous about the way he looks at it. Is
Mm-hmm.
that he will. I think you're right. It's going to test democracy completely.
But we have an image upside down now in American Constitution, United States Constitution. It's fundamental. The freedom of speech is a fundamental part. But now we have it upside down because
Right.
some private businessmen are able now to limit government's freedom of speech. And we saw it before Elon Musk gets becomes a part of this situation with President Trump. Some networks in the United States cut his public speeches because he was saying nonsense. Okay, I agree with that. But it was a very controversial issue in the United States. How can a TV station, a broadcast station, cut the presidential speech?
Yeah, I do think that former President Trump has his communication style and his consistent sharing of disinformation has really tested the boundaries of the news industry. Mm-hmm. There were quite a number of conversations before the news organizations decided to before some of them decided to cut away from President Trump. There was quite a lot of discussion in the news media and on Twitter and other about whether or not they should do it. Mm-hmm. And they ultimately felt like, when you say President Trump speaking nonsense, I think if he was speaking nonsense, they would have left him on. There's a difference between nonsense and false information that is provable false information. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we see that in other parts of the world with other kinds of information where a person who's in a senior official who is putting out information that is completely driving the actions of a country when the information's wrong. Yeah. The news media has a right to speak truth to power also, and that they have a responsibility to do that. I mean, personally, I think they should have done it a long time ago. I think when you know that 2 + 2 is 4, and someone stands up and says 2 + 2 is 5, it is your role to stand there and say, no, that we know for a fact this information is incorrect. And we need to know that we have trusted sources that we can go to, news sources we can go to. That is an important role of theirs.
But we are now facing a very different situation because we have a concentration of money and power just in the hands of one man. And right. I am wondering if it will affect the other media organizations in the United States and globally as well.
I think anything that happens, any action that happens with a very large company that involves a lot of money and a lot of power is going to be looked at in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And we could see even how the influence of President, not to stay fixated on former President Trump, but even his election influenced other kinds of people that were elected in other parts of the world. And I think that the ownership look, there are very few people who could afford to do what Elon Musk is doing. And so it's not that it could be replicated all over the world. You know, he's got a crazy amount of money. But on a smaller scale, how media is owned and the responsibility you might have to providing objective information in the news, that could be something that's replicated. We might, you know, in the best case scenario, you might say that, look, Twitter is in existence because of the millions of people that have Twitter accounts. If Elon Musk does something that most people don't like, they're going to leave Twitter. And he needs to make money, so he doesn't want them to leave Twitter. So maybe it will, it's hard to predict what he will do.
Yeah. It's hard to predict.
You know, he talks about changing the algorithms and changing other things. You know, we'll have to see what that really means.
We have this story at the past, before Trump elected as a president of the United States, this scandal with Cambridge Analytica, where they were forming the algorithms just to support his campaign. And now I'm wondering what will happen if Elon Musk just leave Twitter, operate in the way it was before he buy it, but in a very quiet way. He will change those algorithms to provide his own benefits, maybe for his companies or for himself.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm thinking about these issues, I like to think about not the worst case scenario per se, but almost what's the influence even in the best case scenario. Like, even if he has the best of intentions, even if his goal is to provide the most balanced information, even if all of that were positive, it's still one person owning a global news organization. Just that fact is not good. It
depends to his intentions, whatever they are.
Right. Yeah. But and even if they're, you know, even if they're his intentions, there's still one that's still, and look, there are, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people who work for the company. But if you know that you can be fired for going against the person, and you know, he has Elon Musk has a track record of being an unpredictable boss. You know, people can look at the way he runs Tesla, look at the way he runs, you know, his involvement with SpaceX and other companies, and see that he has an unpredictable nature in the way he manages. So he could put out goals for Twitter that are actually very positive and high level, or he could let it be a free-for-all. You know, I think that something that you said earlier is one of maybe the main challenges, which is sort of what do you do about this? Can you regulate? You know, can the government regulate its way out of this situation? If you're in a democracy where it's a private company, what is the rule that you create that stops something like this? So that's why I often, you know, that I come back to media literacy often, because I feel like it is so key for the people that are consuming Twitter, for the people that are using it, to be asking these questions and to be thinking about these issues and to be taking action based on that knowledge, as opposed to just getting pulled in and not thinking about those issues at all. We, as individual users, have a really deep responsibility here.
Yeah, we have the power in a theoretical way, but we have to apply this power in our everyday routine. Does it, all this situation highlights, in your point of view, the need to have a transmission to a digital democracy situation? I mean, we are transmitting all our activities in a digital way, and we haven't get the rules to imply democracy systems in this digital world. This is a big question in my mind, how we will do that.
Right, and you know, these are not companies that are just existing in one country. You know,
Yes.
even when you have a company, I mean, just to use China as an example, I mean, sometimes you have a company that operates a certain way with a certain free flow of information. And when that company wants to go global and it wants to be in the Chinese market, it has to abide by the rules from China. So it becomes a different kind of company when it's released there. And I think about that with Facebook and Instagram and other social media. I mean, it's a daunting challenge, I think, to consider how global media companies exist in a world where there are individual companies, where there are nationalist interests.
Yes.
So you're a company that can reach everyone and wants to provide access to everyone, but we live in separate countries that are ruled by different constitutions and different leaders with different goals in mind. So that's why I feel like the conversation is important, and I don't want to belittle that, because they're in the face of many other things that can happen. When people are talking and they're talking about things consistently and they're bringing those issues to light and they're highlighting the things that are dangerous and the things that can happen, that's when we, can band together and make sure that some action takes place. And I don't know whether that means, is that a way to stop an Elon Musk? I don't know.
Yes.
But it definitely, no one's making us be on Twitter. If we feel that it's not a good place to be and there's disinformation, we can leave Twitter and go somewhere else.
What was the reaction of the public in the United States after this transaction? I mean, how did the American society reacted to this event, to this transaction?
Well, I can comment on the way the news media reported some of that, and sort of anecdotally among my circle. I certainly cannot speak for the entire country. I should be careful about that.
Yes.
But I think the news media is used to Elon Musk making outlandish statements, right? We're going to populate Mars. We're going to, like whatever the things are. And yet,
we're going to drop electric cars to moon, whatever, yes.
Right. But, he makes progress on these things.
Yes,
and we also know that there's a history of people who, if you are, there are some leaders that can put a stretch goal, right? A really far-achieving goal out there, and that actually does drive people to accomplish amazing things.
Yes.
So I think that you often can, when you read, respected news coverage from the New York Times or from the Washington Post or a number of other companies or online, from CNN or something, that they are trying to balance, on the one hand, recognizing that he's making statements that may not ever come true, while also recognizing that he has been able to make progress that many people thought he would never make.
Yeah,
he has been able to make some of those things come true, right?
Yeah.
So he has a track record now of achieving, even though they're often not exactly what he said, they're far reaching. So I think that's part of what happened among my immediate circle, or among my colleagues. There were, I think, some of the same conversations happened, which is people feeling like he could make improvements on Twitter, but he is an individual owner, and so there's concern about that, and also an overall concern about social media. I think that's what you hear mostly, is an overall concern about the fact that people are getting their news from social media, and what does that really mean for whether or not we have an informed society. If you're only getting your news from little short bits on social media, you're not getting depth of information.
Yes, but there are million or maybe billion of people around the world that they are addicted to this situation. So
well, that's, I have conversations with my students about, in a media literacy class I teach, about, so we always talk about, so where do you get your news and information? And when they say social media, or they'll say Twitter, well, Twitter does not have any reporters, right? There's no reporters hired by Twitter. You're not getting your news from Twitter. You're getting your news from a news organization or from people that you follow on Twitter. And that distinction is important because you chose to follow some folks, or Twitter decided you should follow, the algorithm gave you certain news, but you could say, you can hit a button and say, I don't want to see news from that organization anymore. So you have the power to
change
alter
the world, of course,
what you see.
but
and
you have to change yourself first.
What you say on Twitter, right? You have the power to change what you see on Twitter to some extent. And so I think that we need to recognize that it's news organizations and individuals that are putting content on Twitter, and we can affect that. We have some control over that.
Sherri, do you predict that we will have the emergence of some new social media in the future, that they were based in some different rules, more democratic or more checked and balanced through the public?
Gosh, I wish. I'm not that optimistic about it at this moment. I feel like what's been happening more likely is what happened with former President Trump, which is that when he was knocked off of Twitter, he said, well, that's okay. I'll bring my content to this other social media outlet that will let me be on, or I'll start my own, right? So what starts to happen is if people don't like what they are hearing and what they are seeing, they leave that place and they go get their content somewhere else. And so it separates us more and more into separate ways of thinking instead of doing what you're talking about, which is sort of have the dialogue and have fact-checked and solid information where we can argue about what to do about something, but the information itself is trustworthy. And there are some news organizations that still are fighting for that, but we see audiences over the last 5 years, audiences have been splitting into narrower groups that only want to hear and read what they hear and read. And I think we have an educational responsibility to helping young people from the youngest age, as much as we can, up, to understand what the role of news is in a society and what the value is in doing what you're talking about and having a balanced discussion about the content, about what to do about it. We don't have to agree, but we can at least be getting truthful and objective information.
I think that a big problem is, I don't know if you faced it in the university with your colleagues or your students, that I haven't understand so far what is the mechanism that makes social media popular. How it became so huge, Twitter, Instagram or Facebook, based in what elements they become so large, so huge and so popular. Have you realized that?
Yeah, it's sad to think that we as humans are as predictable as we are, but we are easily manipulated and our actions are very predictable. And so, they're
feeding it.
So there's that, but then, so someone comes along and is a very, very smart person and creates an algorithm, and the algorithm, based on my actions on a daily basis, that algorithm can predict what I like, what I don't like, and the way I'm going to act. And we think that that's not going to have a huge influence on us, but it does. And even someone like myself who works every day to be as media literate as I can, I am still influenced by that. And there's nothing that is going to, or I shouldn't say nothing, but it's very hard to change human instinct. If you show me in my social media feed every day, I often use this example about if you show me every day in my feed red shoes, every day you show me red shoes on sale, red shoes in a cute outfit, red shoes. At some point,
you will buy red shoes for sure.
I'm going to buy those shoes. I'm going to click on it and want more information. And that is human nature. So it's when we have people that have figured out with those algorithms, you said, what makes social media so addictive? Those algorithms are smart. They know a lot about us, and they know that you are different from me in very specific ways, or I am different from a friend of mine who might seem similar in a lot of ways, but is different in some ways. So that has a huge impact, and that's not going to go away, right? That's not
No.
going to disappear. So
Yeah.
we have to create different kinds of algorithms. You know, I'll tell you a funny story. I work a lot with children's media. They just think it's Netflix just announced yesterday or the day before that they're changing the way they show their children's media content. You know, when you go on Netflix, you just see program, lots of programs. When they want children to find things that are unpredictable. So in the list of things that scrolls up, they now are making a box with a question mark on it, because kids are naturally inquisitive. And if they see a box with a question mark, they will click
follow
on
it. Yes, they will click on
So
it.
they are helping children to look at things that they might not have selected otherwise. There's an example of sort of how the algorithm and how the structure and navigation can be used for good, right?
Yeah.
So there is a way to design these news sites that would help us to look at things that we might not have considered, or to be leaning more toward information that has been fact-checked. There are ways to do that if the social media companies want to do it.
That what I understand it is that we are moving to a very mysterious world, referring to the social media and information industry for the years to come. And we have to understand that the more we know about the structure and the strategies that those media operates, the more democratically we will live our lives. And that's why I understand is so important what you do in Temple University with media literacy and the ability you give to your students and the society to understand how things work. And that's why it's always valuable to have you here.
Well, thank you. I mean, I definitely feel passionately about the need for us to be having these conversations. So I appreciate being here and talking to you about it too.
Will we see you at Thessaloniki International Summer School Academy this year?
You will. You will definitely see me there.
Okay.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. It was really great to have you here, Sherri. I want to thank you very much for this conversation. You're always to the point and very, with big knowledge around it. So it was really a pleasure and very helpful for us to have you here. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Goodbye, Sherri.
Bye-bye.
I hope I will see you this summer in Thessaloniki.
I as well.
Okay. Κυρίες και κύριοι, ήταν η Sherri Hope-Calver, καθηγήτρια εγγραμματισμού των μέσων ενημέρωσης στο Πανεπιστήμιο Temple της Νέας Υόρκης, η οποία μίλησε όχι μόνο για την αγοροπολισία του Twitter, αλλά και για τον τρόπο με τον οποίο λειτουργούν οι πλατφόρμες των μέσων κοινωνικής δικτύωσης, αλλά και τα μέσα ενημέρωσης. Σας ευχαριστούμε που μας παρακολουθήσατε. Θα τα ξαναπούμε την επόμενη Πέμπτη, ελπίζουμε πάντα με θέματα της επικαιρότητας και του ενδιαφέροντος. Καλό βράδυ σε όλους.